Powered by Zbooni. The Zbooni app gives businesses free tools to start and grow online. Accept payments, build an e-store, and create mobile invoices in minutes. While the interview is brought to you by Zbooni, the guests and stories told are their own. Welcome to another episode of Dubai Works Business Podcast. Today we have a really interesting conversation and a prominent guest lined up. We'll be speaking to the founder and CEO of Property Finder Group, Michael Lahyani. Michael is a pioneer in innovation and technology in the real estate industry. The company has grown exponentially through the years into an impressive and culturally diverse team of 300 individuals that generates over 14 million monthly website hits across its 6 countries in operation. So Property Finder is a real estate portal that facilitates the house hunting journey for both buyers and renters. They actually started nearly 14 years ago in 2007 as propertyfinder.ae, and they're owned and operated by the Property Finder Group, which also owns and operates real estate portals and CRMs across MENA and Turkey. So we'll be explaining a lot of that jargon, and we'll be discussing in more detail the story of Property Finder, what it's like to scale a prop tech company in MENA, and also real estate marketing during a global pandemic. Welcome, Michael.
Welcome, Richard. Thank you.
Thanks for joining the podcast. You're in your nice offices in Media City, I can see.
Absolutely. I am here at Media City. We don't yet have a full office, but a few people in the office, few people working from home. It's the new way to go.
Is that so? You yourself, do you prefer working from the office, and have you been back most of the time in the last year or so?
I think, like everyone, I'm enjoying the flexibility. So I'm enjoying to work partially from the office when I want to catch up with my colleagues and when we have a couple of important face-to-face meetings. And then I think the ability to be able to work from home and then, plug in through Zoom if you need to, but have the quiet, the peace that you get at home, which you rarely get into the office, is quite productive.
That's interesting from a flexibility and productivity point of view. Yeah, I think many staff like that as well. So I'm sure your employees are happier in that way. So Michael, I did touch on it at the start, but can you just explain Property Finder, what it is and your business?
Sure, absolutely. So we're the leading real estate online brand. What does that mean is that we are the go-to destination for every property seekers, whether they are looking to rent a place, buy a place, invest into real estate, residential and commercial, existing homes or new homes. So all these verticals we cover. And our business is to work with the real estate developers and the real estate brokers to provide them qualified property seekers. So that's in a nutshell what we do. In a more summarized way, we help people find their home. That's what we do.
Amazing, perfect, and it's a very well-known brand, and it's the name says that as well, to help you find a property. But how did you come up with the concept, and how did it start? How did the idea start?
So when I came for the first time to Dubai in 2005, they were building the Palm Island, they were building the marina, the Burj Khalifa wasn't to be seen from the horizon yet. And everybody was focusing on building these amazing projects. And when I asked how do people search and how do people actually find a place to rent, everybody pointed me to the same place, which was a newspaper, a supplement of a newspaper. And in a modern city like Dubai, to think that you'd had to flick through hundreds of pages of a newspaper in order to find a property sounded wrong. It sounded like there was an opportunity here to build something better, a better search engine, a better way to find a property. And we wanted to go straight to the internet because that was the right way to do it. But internet penetration was only at 40% back then, right? So people were not really turning to online websites to find their home. They were still looking for a piece of paper. So we started as a magazine. We started as a free distributed magazine, and we started distributing this magazine all across the city. And we also had a website that people could search, but barely anybody would go online. And that's how we got traction, and we started classifying the way Dubai was done through a map on the magazine, and there was color-coded areas, and you could search apartment in Dubai Marina through a special color code, rather than having to flick through hundreds of pages of a newspaper. So it was well organized. And we faced, fierce competition as any company that enters into a market. Gulf News was very much protective of their classified business, and it was a little bit the David and Goliath kind of scenario where we were going straight for their customers, and so we had a bit of a fierce battle, and to be honest, we almost went out of business. I mean, we were pretty close to closing shop until we were able to attract the interest from an international group, a group that's owned by Rupert Murdoch, called the REA Group, which is basically the leading real estate portal in Australia. And they decided to come in and invest in our business, and that's literally what saved us from bankruptcy.
Amazing. So many things there. Such an interesting Dubai story as well. So it's a fascinating statistic from 2007, because it's not 1997. To know that the penetration was still had to grow a lot at that period is interesting, but that you did have it in mind for the business and that you wanted to do both. And then, of course, the global downturn, the 2008 financial crisis, is that what led to the difficulty in the early stage of the business, or was it the business model and the internet penetration and the part that you had to grow first? What was the kind of factor there?
So the struggle in the beginning was just that we were attacking a much larger player that had a bigger audience, which was the newspaper. And real estate agents and developers didn't really need to change anything in the way they advertised. It was working for them, the paper, and it was just a startup trying to get some market share. What the financial crisis provided was actually more of an opportunity, right? During crisis is when the best businesses are built. And when the financial crisis came, the real estate agents needed a different way to advertise their property, a more affordable way to advertise their property than in the print. And that's when the online product became actually a hit and delivered the results that they were looking for.
Interesting. And just going back to, you kind of referenced the Gulf News in terms of competition. Talking about competition, were you the only players? Were you the first players in this space on the sort of offering that you have? Were you early on that level?
Yes, we were. There were other players that don't exist anymore today, but we were among the first one. And obviously, at the similar time, Dubizzle also launched, right? But Dubizzle had a different approach where it was very much consumer content that was posted on the website, whereas we were working only with real estate professionals. And that's how we kind of differentiated ourselves from the experience that Dubizzle offered, was that every listing on Property Finder was from a registered and licensed real estate broker, whereas the horizontals or the general classified had a bit of a mix of both. And so you could end up speaking to a broker, but you could also end up speaking to an individual. And obviously the consistency and the experience wasn't the same than on Property Finder.
Interesting. So they were more of a marketplace, and you were catered specifically towards a kind of a B2B sector. I'm just fascinated by the era, the kind of the late noughties in terms of what you've just described. I remember I was in Ireland at the time, and there was a particular property boom, and there was references that similar as I'm sure was here with Gulf News, the property pullout section in the Irish Times was more than the newspaper, and everyone was buying property, so they were so excited about that. But then it's so thinking back, then of course it doesn't exist now. They had a portal as well in Ireland. Where were you before you came here, Michael, and how did you think that this was missing here?
So I was in my home country, in Switzerland, in Geneva, and I had a publishing business where we were publishers of magazine and equestrian sports, so polo and show jumping, so nothing to do with real estate. And actually, when I first came to Dubai, I came here to visit my uncle, and I ended up at the races, at Nad Al Shiba races. And I was walking around with my magazine, and then I met a prominent local figure in the horse world who said, "Hey, what's this magazine you're holding?" And I said, "Well, that's a magazine I publish in Switzerland. But you should come and do it here. We love horses here. Why don't you come and establish your magazine here?" I thought, I was like, really? Like, is there a market for this here? And then, next thing you know, I launched my magazine. It was called Equestrio at the time. All the horse lover would remember it. And we launched Equestrio here, Equestrio Arabia, and Equestrio Arabia did very well. But it was very niche. It was an equestrian sports magazine. And so I thought, okay, now what's my next step? It's going to be something in editing and publishing, but I want to do something a little bit more mass market. What's missing in the mass market? And it was really the time when classifieds were picking up in Europe. I'm sure in Ireland you had them as well. Those little classified boxes where you had those magazines with all the real estate advertising in it, and they were just specialized for real estate. So that's the concept we took from Europe and we brought here. Free distributed real estate classified. Because we didn't have the distribution of Golf News, so the only way we could get the same reach is if we distributed it for free. So we used to do, in the lobbies of hotels, in the lobbies of building, we used to distribute it as well door to door, and that's how we all kind of started it.
Amazing! I didn't know there was the publishing background to it, so that's fascinating. Was your business model then paid for listings like it might have been on classifieds? And at what point did you kind of become more of a portal?
Yeah, so the model was as close as what you have today online, but for print. So people who read, your eyeballs do not pay for the service. Who pays for it is the one who are benefiting from those eyeballs. So the advertisers, so the real estate brokers. So they would pay to list in our classified magazine. And then we would, guarantee 100,000 copies would be distributed on a weekly basis. And how did the model switch from print to online? Well, ultimately, when we attracted the investors from Australia and who literally saved us from bankrupting against, the big Goliath that was Golf News. We then said, look, it's going to be really hard to beat Golf News as its game, right? In print, they definitely have a bigger audience than us. They've got a bigger brand than us. And they were, quite aggressive in the way that they were protecting their business, rightly so. And so we said, well, we're not going to win the print war, so let's move to online. The world will move online at some point. It might be a little bit early, but if we move now and we build a great online product, whenever that market moves to online, we'll be there ready to benefit from it. And so the great thing was that the Australians were running the leading real estate portal in Australia. Australia was a little bit advanced in terms of internet penetration, so that was already the first destination for all the property seekers. They would go online. And so, I looked at their business model and I thought, wow, this is pretty slick. You don't have to print it. Everything is searchable with technology. And real estate agents then, moved from paying from, hey, I want to have my ad in 1, 2, 3 issues of the magazine, to, well, now you got to buy a yearly subscription, and then you pay that month, and then you pay a monthly fee for that, for you to be able to advertise on the portal. So when REA invested into the business, that was in 2008, we decided to kill the print. It was a big bet, and move everything to online, and build from there. And then, overnight, we went totally off the radar of Golf News, because suddenly we weren't, a threat anymore, because we weren't at print. Online was, irrelevant at the time. Why would they even bother about an online competitor? Nobody's going to ever look online. Everybody's going to go back to the newspaper. And obviously, as we know, things change. Habits changed.
Yeah. Strategically, it sounds like a very smart move to disappear, to play in a space where they're not. But I'm sure it wasn't as simple as that. I'm sure there was competition and there were challenges. At what point the investment came in, did you kind of did you relax then? Was it all plain sailing from then, or how did it kind of evolve from there?
So yeah, I definitely relaxed because, pre-investment, I had sleepless night on the 25th of the month thinking, how am I going to pay my team, and, um, trying to keep the business afloat. So definitely when they came in, they invested a total of about $3 million. That was a fortune back in 2007 when they came in. Um, and suddenly I had, cash in the bank. I had a shareholder that had deep pockets, and I had a plan to basically conquer the market, which was to stop going head to head with a competitor and to go, sideways and attack from a different angle. So definitely, I got to relax and I got to think a little bit more long term, rather than thinking how I was going to meet the end of the month and making sure that my customers, would pay us and not move to Golf News. Now I was, in a more long-term position and saying, well, look, you can definitely and you should definitely be in Golf News. Golf News is going to bring you a ton of exposure, but why don't you try a really cheap product, which is online, and it gives you an exposure online. And until you don't have the leads that you're happy with, you shouldn't, be paying a lot of money to us. But once we can show you that we deliver value to you, then whether a lead is coming from the print or whether it's coming from online, it really is irrelevant to you. What matters is the value of the lead. And so we, spent a lot of time pitching digital advertising to an industry that had no idea about digital advertising. And that was also a fascinating journey, taking the real estate agents on this journey. And working close with them, and till today I've got clients that have been with us for 15 years. I remember their agency 15 years ago, with 3, 4, 5 agents. Today their agency with 100, 200 agents. It's been beautiful to kind of grow the market together. They're doing the transaction. We're marketing the properties. So it's been a fascinating journey.
Amazing. Yeah, I think people will have different touch points with Property Finder, and of course with real estate agents. Everyone's either bought or rented in Dubai, so I'm sure people will be very familiar. We'll go back a little bit later on the sort of fundraising and the prop tech space, but just to touch on the real estate. So what you mentioned advertising. Did they see Property Finder, the real estate brokers and the agents, as a place to advertise? Did they see it as we look at aggregators in the F&B space and they see that as a disruptor and a margin eater, or we see, you mentioned Rupert Murdoch in Australia and that News Corp group, and, they see the tech companies as utilities and taxes, and there's a lot of kind of struggle there. The picture you're painting is a little bit more amicable. Was that the case? Was it kind of let's grow together? And how did that happen?
Yeah, I think that as an aggregator, we've managed to keep good relationships with our customers, and we haven't. Yes, sometimes there's a little bit of this love and hate kind of relationship because we provide great value, but obviously it comes at a cost. But I think what the real estate portals have done a little bit differently than the food aggregators is that we're not taking a commission, meaning that we're not looking at the transactions that they're making and saying we want 25%, 35%, which is what the food aggregators are saying to the restaurants. We want 35% of your business, of your revenues. We don't do that. We've got products that we sell, and they are a flat fee in the sense that whether they close the lead into a deal or not, it won't impact what they pay us, right? So they pay a monthly fee, and then it's up to them to kind of make the best out of the leads that we deliver to them, right? So we're not eating into their lunch the way the food aggregators are eating into the restaurant's lunch, if I can say.
Yeah, amazing. I was stick on that for a second. So obviously, the competitors, they can do their own portal. The real estate agents, they can advertise on you. They can do both. Um, do you see Property Finder, your only competitors, similar to that, or do you see, say, publishers who no longer have classified listings, or even the Googles and the Facebooks and the other advertising? How wide do you see your competitors at the moment, Michael?
Yeah. So I think the publishers, unfortunately for them, fortunately for us, they've missed the curve. And if they haven't been able to move into the real digital space, it's that train has gone. And you guys are even replacing the traditional publishers, and you know why, and you know why you're doing better than them. When it comes to the big tech players, the Googles and Facebook of the world, I think any online business has to consider them as a potential competitor. They are a competitor to any online business, especially businesses that rely on search engine, meaning that if your traffic is coming from search engines and there's only one out there, right? Then you should think about how to make sure that you're less reliable on this search engine. That's a fact. So do we see the real estate? Do we see the real estate agents portal as a competitor? Not at this stage.
As mentioned at the start of this episode, Dubai Works is powered by Zbooni. Zbooni gives businesses free tools to start, run, and grow online, accept payments, build an e-store, and create mobile invoices in minutes. InVIP is a concierge service for luxury experiences that manages all virtual transactions through Zbooni. As there are so many permutations of what is being provided, Zbooni is the perfect partner to ensure invoices are prepared on the go and payments are made in a timely manner, a critical hurdle to allowing InVIP to move quickly and secure opted-in experiences for their customers. Not at this stage. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so just kind of sticking on the journey so far as well. The decisions, like, we kind of take it for granted that that you're a property specialist, that Property Finder is very successful, it's very well known, it's scaling across the region. Were there times in the journey where you said, okay, we've disrupted one vertical of classifieds, should we do another? Should we go into insurance? Should we do this? Should we do this? What was the strategic roadmap in that regard?
So I believe, that every growth business, every startup, every growth business, every business should have as much focus as possible, right? Especially if you're trying to do things differently and you're trying to change the way an industry works. You want to be extremely focused. It's been, many times we've been thinking, should we go into other areas? Like you said, insurance or cars or jobs, classified. And we really believe in order to deliver value to our users who come to the site, in order to deliver value to our paying customers, we have to remain focused on property, on real estate sector. And until the house hunting journey isn't a seamless journey as ordering food, right, or as ordering a car, I think we still have a lot of room for improvement. As long as there's friction in this process, Property Finder's mission isn't completed. And it'll take a long time until we take out all the friction points of a real estate or of a house hunting journey.
Fascinating. Do you define that as a mission? Do you define it as removing friction? Is that how you position it?
Yeah, we're really defining our mission as enabling people to better their lives, right? Because being able to find the right home for your family is really probably the most step change that you can do in your lifestyle. But clearly our mission is to take away the friction during that journey until from the moment you say, hey, I'd like a bigger home, I'd like a home with a view, I'd like a house with a garden, to the moment that you actually move into it. whether you're renting, whether you're buying, whatever the journey you decide to take, there are multiple friction points along the way. And we are working closely with all the actors, right? Sometimes, real estate agents, the owners, the banks that get involved in order to make sure that, we can seamlessly improve this experience. That's what online businesses do. We need to offer an amazing user experience. That's our obsession.
Yeah, exactly. And then, if you get that right, the world's your oyster. You can keep scaling it because the internet keeps getting bigger and bigger for everyone and the adoption. But Michael, going back to the fundraising, when you were speaking to the initial partners, was PropTech a term? Were you structured? Were you structured as a startup? And what has that journey been like? And you as a founder and a CEO, how much of your time has gone into raising funds and telling the journey and speaking to investors over the last decade?
So in my journey, I've had two types of investor, right? And I've had kind of two types of fundraising. I've got the first one, which was from a strategic, which was the Australian company that we talked about that came in and literally kind of saved us and invested. But they took a majority of the business. They took 51% of the business back in the days. I remained as the CEO and ran the company. And at the time, that they were the only investor I spoke to. I didn't kind of go to other investors. Nobody was interested in my business. And there wasn't a VC scene at the time. There wasn't any venture capital money being invested in that kind of businesses. So the only potential investor was a strategic that knew the business and that wanted to enter this part of the world. And then there's the second part of fundraising is when I went to the VC. So what happened in between, maybe I could share that for 2-3 minutes. Basically, when the global financial crisis hit the world, I remember we were all sitting in Dubai thinking, it's not gonna hit Dubai. Dubai seems to be immune. Things seem to come to Dubai with a couple of months of delay. But 3-4 months after it hit the US and Europe, well, we started feeling the effect here in Dubai. And then, real estate prices started plummeting and people started panicking. There were articles of people, fleeing the country and leaving their cars at the airport. And the Australians were suddenly, also dealing with a crisis at home. They had a big business there that required them to focus on their core markets. And they wanted to see Dubai kind of break even, right? And, they just had recently invested about a year ago, and I said to them, well, that was never the plan, right? I mean, the plan is that you guys come in, you invest, but then you invest further because, we're here to take the market, and the market is there for us to grab. Yeah, but, we're not too sure about this part of the world. We're not too sure we don't want to be there. And the conversation started becoming difficult, and ultimately it became evident that, that we weren't aligned in terms of the vision. I wanted to double down during the crisis because I felt that this was the time when the real estate agents, were looking for an alternative to an expensive advertising channel, which was newspaper. And, we had a product, but we needed to kind of spend more on marketing in order to make our product relevant. And they didn't see it this way. And ultimately we agreed to part way, and I was able to buy them out. And obviously buying a partner out in the middle of a crisis is a very different conversation than buying out a partner when you're at the top of the game, right? So I was able to kind of take control back of the business at an interesting, I would say, price for the business. And keep my teams secure, because obviously what they wanted is the business to break even, so they wanted to let go half of the people. But I really believe that we had something in our hands, and we'd go through this crisis, and then Property Finder would become a winner out of this crisis. And that worked out well. We were able to buy them out. I also bought out my co-founder at the same time, because he was also not so sure about where Dubai was heading. I think very few people, especially people that were not in Dubai, would not bet on Dubai's longevity. But when you lived in Dubai during the financial crisis, and you would socialize, and you would go out to restaurants and to bars and clubs, and you would see that, life went on. Like, yes, there was a little bit of a crisis, but people were there to stay, or at least the core of the people were there to stay. Those that were fleeing at the airports were people who just had come for a quick buck and realized that, that buck wasn't there anymore to be made. So they left. But the true businesses stayed here, and this city was, building amazing infrastructure. And so to me, it was obvious that it was going to survive and to actually thrive from this crisis. And, Dubai has proven it to us a second time this time, but this was the first time that, Dubai reacts really well to crisis. It rebounds really well. It has kind of that fighter mentality. It has kind of like, let's go for it, and we can, reinvent ourselves and grow from our ashes. Yeah. And the market, rebounded, and it was and it was the market started coming back, and we were there to benefit from it.
Amazing. I think some people have the fighter mentality and the double down approach, like Dubai does, that you have, and maybe others who flee didn't. Fascinating story, and obviously the parallels between now and then, people listening will kind of relate. It's really interesting, some of the themes and the articles that we saw a year ago as well. But so going back to that time in terms of how did you go about funding the buyouts? Did you get debt? Was debt available? You believed in the market. How did you go about it?
So when I sold the control of the business, right, when they came in and bought the control of the business, they invested 3 million, I told you. Majority of that, went into the business, but a good chunk of it went to the founders, to myself and my co-founder at the time. And fortunately for us, we didn't blow it all off. And 2 years later, when the opportunity to buy them out came, that was enough money to buy them out, right? It was, in the middle of a crisis, and, we bought them out, at a big discount from what they had paid to come in. And so the money that we had taken from the business was enough to buy them out. So that's the answer to your question.
It's a brilliant, being very enterprising, and it's brilliant entrepreneurship, strategic move by you on that part. Were you more reluctant then, or was it harder to convince the next partners, bearing in mind that those guys, that partner knew the industry, and they were strategic, and they were supposed to see long term, but they didn't? So had you cold feet going back to the market again? Did you think that, well, I'm going to have to do this myself?
Yeah, so the business was in a very different position when we went back to raise funds, right? So we didn't go immediately. So we bought them out in 2009 at the middle of the financial crisis. And I raised my first VC round in 2012. So 3 years went in between. And during these 3 years, the landscape changed, meaning that the real estate agents now totally considered Property Finder as a viable source of leads, and started paying for their subscription to list on Property Finder, and also the users suddenly saw the benefits of going to online, that the search experience online was a lot more friendly than using a newspaper. So when we went back to the market to raise 3 years later, we actually had a business. We had rebounded from the bottom. We weren't in a leading position yet, because the general classified was also there, and they were also providing good value. But we had a brand, and I didn't go to a strategic, but I had to go to somebody that understood classified, right? And tech. And I think that was, again, one of the lucky moments of this journey is right at that time, the founders of the co-founder of Bait.com, which is the #1 job website in the region, had exited his business. He sold his shares to one of the shareholder, and decided that he wanted to go into VC investments, and hadn't started yet his VC fund, which is today called Echo Capital, and him and I were introduced. And when Danny, Farha, and myself met, it was like, he understood all the challenges I was going through, and he saw the opportunity of real estate classified as being a huge vertical, probably bigger than the job vertical. And he said, "Yeah, I'm game. I want to invest into your business. I love it." And that's how I raised, that first kind of VC round in 2012.
Amazing. You were running the business as well, like the day-to-day, the management of people. How did you do both? How did you do everything, not just in terms of time, but in terms of skill set and capacity? Because fundraising, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but it's challenging to understand and to raise funds and to tell that story, as well as how many people, we mentioned 300 individuals. You're obviously managing people as well. How did you manage?
So we didn't have 300 people at the time, right? But the truth is, you need a great team around you. I mean, you have me here sitting in front of you and telling you about all this amazing story, but me without my team, I'm just another dreamer, right? I need the people to be able to deliver on that. So I had a great team. I had a great number two that was running the business with me, who really did an amazing job on the day-to-day operations, and that gave me, that freedom to go in and pitch for new money. So the team was absolutely essential, making sure that you've got a team that can run the business. And then externally, also, I had friends in my network that knew private equity, that knew VC investment, and that were advising me as well. And so they were, immensely also helpful in helping me navigate the maze of fundraising and term sheets, and all of that was quite new back in the days, right? But I guess that's what entrepreneurs do. We juggle with a lot of things, but more importantly, we surround ourselves with the right teams, and that's how that's possible.
Very interesting. And then you kind of learn as you do it as well. But you stayed focused. In hindsight, you've done a lot of kind of playbook advice that people would say for entrepreneurs to do. What stage is Property Finder at now in terms of maturity as a business? How much have you raised totally? What round are you in? And how would you say the current stage that you're in, if you can reveal it, just in terms of the phase of the growth of the company?
Yes, so very different from the scrappy early days. It is now what we call, a growth phase, a scaling phase. So it's a phase where, you try to build a business that is going to be robust and that can survive, the future crisis that will come to this world, and that can scale across multiple markets. And that can be predictable, right? Because that's what investors want. They want a business that can grow and that is predictable in the way that it's growing. So over the years, we've done from venture funds, right? We've done kind of 3 rounds. Beko was the first round that we did in 2012, where we raised approximately $2 million. We raised then $20 million in 2015 from an investor from Sweden called Vostok, which is also specialized in tech. And then more recently, actually 2 years ago now, 2018, a little over 2 years ago, we raised from private equity, American private equity, General Atlantic, $120 million. And I think that was really kind of a big game changer. Not necessarily in terms of funding. Yes, of course, funding allows you to do a lot more, but also in terms of the talent that you can attract into your organization. Building an employer brand is as important as building a consumer brand. Why? Because an employer brand enables you to attract amazing talents. And in a business where everything is about your talent, because we don't sell hard goods material, we sell digital products, and digital products are built by people. And so attracting the right people is going to make you or not. And so having these kind of triple A investors like General Atlantic, who's a very well-renowned investor in the tech space. They've done Uber, they've done Airbnb, they've done Dropbox, they've done, you name it, all the companies that they've been backing. Suddenly having a name like that in our cap table, then, top talents of other tech companies start thinking, what's going on at Property Finder? That's kind of interesting. Maybe I should see what, is there something, maybe there's an opportunity there. And that has, been kind of a game changer because we've been able to attract amazing people to the organization.
Amazing. It's pretty inspiring listening to Michael talk about that. But and also what's really nice is a Dubai success story that not only did people hear and you believe in what was happening here, but also that you brought two European and American investors to believe in the region. So it's fascinating. Do you think you don't have to reveal your future growth strategy, but do you think in terms of the ecosystem on startups and fundraising, what does exits look like? Is it always a multinational, and particularly around the prop tech space? Because when I made the example of Ireland, and when we talk about maybe in Switzerland, Europe, and Australia, and here, the companies in your space seem to be indigenous, homegrown. Does that mean that your roadmap or your exit is different? And would you entertain, a pretty blunt question, would you entertain a listing on a regional stock market as an opportunity?
So many questions there. First of all, on the ecosystem, it's still a young ecosystem. It's still a young kind of tech ecosystem, but it's amazing what's happening right now in the UAE and Saudi and in the region in general. We are seeing a lot of startups popping up, and there's no shortcut to creating an ecosystem. There's got to be funding that comes in. There's got to be successes. There's got to be failures. There's got to be learnings, not only from the entrepreneurs, from the investors as well. And that is kind of happening right now at the moment. In terms of exits, I think I've never really built this business thinking I'm building this business to sell it. I'm actually building this business to solve a problem. And the problem that we're solving is, as I told you earlier, not solved yet, right? And we still have quite a lot to do in order to offer that seamless experience to our users. What I want to provide is what I need to provide. My duty as a CEO is to provide liquidity to the investors that have come in and who want to exit. So that is being done, and we've allowed many earlier investors that came into Property Finder to exit when General Atlantic came in, and so it was a nice moment, right, to see creating changing lives for the people that have either worked for you or believed in you in the early days, and making a really nice exit for them with meaningful money that would change their lives was a great moment and a great achievement. But right now, my shareholders are very aligned with me. They believe that our journey is not finished, that there's still a lot more room to grow. Yes, we've been at it for 15 years, but Property Finder has a lot more to grow. And I think as long as they're not in a rush to exit, then we don't really need to think about that exit, right? And we don't really need to kind of answer, the listing on a local stock market or not. Of course, listing on your local stock market makes a lot more sense than going to a foreign stock market. And if you can do that, one should. Because when you go to a foreign stock market, you have to explain, so why are you coming to London to list? Why are you coming to the US to list? If you have a business that's in the Middle East, why aren't you listing in the Middle East? Now, the stock market has to be adapted to your listing. The rules around it have to be adapted. And also, more importantly, the liquidity has to be there, right? Because if you're listing a business, the main purpose of listing a business is to be able to sell and buy your shares any day. And if there isn't a liquidity because the depth of the market or the depth of the investor behind the stock market isn't there, then you're not going to get that liquidity, and therefore you get all the challenges of being a public company without having the liquidity of your stock, right? But I think the markets here are maturing, and they are taking feedback. We are talking to them. We are giving them, what we believe needs to change, and hopefully we'll have vibrant local stock markets at some points. In tech, we have vibrant local stock markets. Don't get me wrong, but they're not I think the tech, equities on the Middle Eastern stock market are, below 5% when they're more than half of the more than half of the equity market in the US.
It's so interesting to talk about, and thank you for sharing, not just in terms of Property Finder, but in terms of retail investors and household names, and to hear it from that point of view and percentages is really interesting. So yes, fascinating for the growth of the region outside of the real estate space. But just talking about your growth and choosing different markets, of course, people, real estate is very visual in Dubai. It's fascinating. There are many dreamers in real estate. There's many amazing opportunities. There aren't 20 Dubais across the region. How do you choose where to go next, and how do you apply the success story, the blueprint for Property Finder in other markets?
Yes. So how we chose to go next versus how we choose today to go next is very different. Back in the days, how did we choose to go into a new market? We went online and we looked for a portal that had property listing. And if there wasn't property listings in that market, we say, let's go. And then we went and we decided to open into those markets. Very little study went behind it. Very little, thinking, I want to say, went behind it. And we kind of said, the UAE is a very good market, very vibrant market. But at the end of the day, it's only 10 million population. And we're operating in the Arab world that has, over 300 million population. So, why not go to another market? And so we went immediately to Qatar, which was a similar kind of Gulf country with an expat population, with also real estate projects, and that didn't have a real estate portal. And the reason why we kind of rushed to those markets is because when you're building a marketplace that has network effects, being the first mover is extremely important, right? And being the first one to build this network effect then enables you to have a leading position in the market. So we kind of went and decided that we'd go in Qatar, Bahrain, and Egypt, and Saudi, in Lebanon, and Morocco. And the truth is, we probably took more than we could chew on. We went into so many markets thinking that, they'll be very similar to the UAE. Some were, some weren't, right? So if I take Qatar and Bahrain, with the same product, with the same strategy, with the same kind of DNA in our team, we were able to build a business. When you go to countries like Egypt, Morocco, Saudi, each and every one has its local specificities, and they're very, very different from the UAE. And so it's okay to deal with one market that's different than your home market. But if you're suddenly dealing with, 3-4 markets that are different, it becomes quite complex, and suddenly you have so many things to do, and prioritization becomes hard. And, you start spreading yourself too thin. So I always say to, younger entrepreneurs who say, hey, we want to go in this market, we want to do this, we want to do that. I say, make sure that you win, first of all, your home market. You got to be an absolute leader in your home market before you go into another market, because that market will come with a whole new range of problems that you're going to have to deal with. And if you're not 100% secure in your home market, then your whole business will kind of drown. So we were fortunate to have a good, strong position in the UAE, which enabled us to do kind of trial and errors in some other markets. And we did our errors, right? I mean, we definitely didn't get everything right. And no entrepreneur does. That's how we grow. We try something. If it works, we continue, we double down. If it doesn't work, we fail fast, and then we move on, right? And sometimes I would have liked to fail faster in some markets. So we realized that, Morocco is going to be a really hard market. We thought that it was a 30 million population, that it should have enough depth. But we realized that actually people that are buying and selling property in Morocco is a very, very thin portion of the population. And so we decided that this market won't move the needle for Property Finder. Better to pull out of this market and put our resources in a market that will move the needle. And so we decided to pull out of two markets, which is Lebanon and Morocco. And that enables us to double down in markets that we see huge potential, like Egypt, 100 million population. We build a good business over there that'll be creating a lot of shareholder value, and then making sure that we don't lose the market where we're number one and continue to be a strong number one in UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, etc.
Amazing. Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, I'm sure many people will have different sorts of market entry stories that can learn. And thanks for being frank on the sort of failures as well that not everyone on the podcast does. So good learnings, and good to see that they're focused markets as well. I want to talk a little bit about the pandemic. People will have seen certain narratives around property in Dubai. Everyone seems to be interested. People seem to be moving to bigger villas, working from home, turning their homes into offices. And there seems to be a little bit of momentum in the real estate market. How has Property Finder navigated the pandemic, and how do you see the sort of the next couple of years in regard of sort of recovery?
So as every company, the pandemic was challenging times because there was so much unknown. We didn't know how long it would last, how long those lockdowns would force us to stay home. And as any business, even though we are a digital business, suddenly to go from working all in the office to everybody working remotely came with its challenges. Luckily, we were prepared. And again, my team played a massive role in that. And we had a bit of kind of a seamless transition to working from home. What really hit us is the fact that, well, hold on, if you can't leave home, that means you can't visit properties. If you can't visit properties, our real estate agents, our customers can't do viewings. If they can't do viewings, they can't close deals. If they can't close deals, they don't make commission. If they don't make commission, how can they pay Property Finder? And that was kind of a big moment where, all my customers turned to me and said, what are we going to do? And then we said, well, we're going to try to help you, but we also have a business to run. And then they say, yeah, but you need to absolutely help us. And that's where we had to find a middle ground. And I'm sure you remember this being, media who were delighted to talk about these moments. But ultimately, we all came around the table and agreed on a way forward. And we gave them, months for free to subscribe to Property Finder during those lockdowns. It turned out that the market reopened much faster than what we had anticipated and rebounded much faster than we had anticipated. So today, when I bump into my dear customers, I tell them, I smile at them. I said, you got the better of me on this one, but we're in the long term in this. So very happy that the business is back, and very happy that the real estate sector has been, as we say, one of the COVID darlings, as odd as this sounds, right? I mean, people are spending more time home, as you said. People are looking, for bigger homes to work and to have an office in there. And so everybody started saying, well, let me rethink of my setup. Whether I'm renting, I also want to rethink of my setup. And a lot of people that, wanted to buy for many years in Dubai, that always thought that, oh man, those prices are still going up. It's so expensive. Suddenly prices have come down and banks were suddenly loaning below 3% mortgages, which has never been seen before in the UAE. So suddenly you could own a home that, couple of months before you couldn't dream of. And what happened is that a lot of those potential buyers that were renting in Dubai for many years, that had always been kind of sitting on the fence to kind of buy, went into being the first time buyers and bought, the properties when they kind of hit, or when they believe that they hit the low point of the market. And that generated kind of that rebound, that what we call pent up demand. And so, yes, the real estate markets rebounded very well, but not all part of the markets, right? Let's be honest. Not everywhere in Dubai it rebounded well. Definitely houses did much better than apartments for obvious reasons. People wanted gardens and wanted to be able to not be locked into a glass tower. And then, any property that had a balcony or an open view to the ocean, sea, would do well. So suddenly there was, for those very kind of particular properties, these done extremely well. And all the real estate agents will testify that, it's been one of the best times for them over these last couple of months. Like Q4 and now Q1 are extremely good months in terms of volumes of transactions.
Fascinating. And it just go to show how quick things move. The initial sort of wobble or fear, has changed now, and the landscape is different. I'm conscious of time. There's so many things we could talk about real estate. I met a broker the other day who told me that he was just passionate about it. He loves everything about it. And I think, there are many people who just really into it, like say football. But we always kind of finish up on the podcast and ask about the guest, your view, Michael, on this region as an emerging market, and particularly with respect of, you're from another country, you have investors from other markets. What's your outlook? Will this region emerge in whatever classification? Are you optimistic in the next, say, decade or two for this region?
The short answer to this is absolutely.
Great.
I'm absolutely optimistic. We have one thing in common with your brand and myself, is that we both love Dubai. So I am very optimistic. Why? Because I've seen Dubai and the UAE, not just Dubai, but the country, evolve very methodically over the last 15 years. Dubai has consistently proven that they are determined to keep its expats, or I more want to call it local resident population, engaged and happy, and give them no reason to leave and to go wherever home is. And they've done that in a way that enabled them to keep their identity, to keep the country safe. And every year the UAE does a move in that direction. It opens up to the world without moving away from their local values. And I think that has been admirable to watch. And we've witnessed more of that in the recent kind of year. More recently with Abrahamic Accords, zero tolerance, with conversations around citizenship. I mean, these are all seismic moves in the region. And I think that, the world doesn't really realize what that means for the region. But this is really, what we as, newcomers to Dubai thought it was going to be impossible that, they would go there one day. And that day has come, and has come sooner than what we thought, right? The world is moving faster, and what's great to always see with the UAE government is that they're adapting to that speed. Yes, of course, we all want governments to move faster. But if I look at the governments and compare our governments, the UAE government compared to any governments in the world, they adapt very quickly. And they come out with regulations that are response to the local needs at the moments. So I am very, I'm very opportunistic. I'm very bullish about the UAE, and I've also seen how the UAE brand, how the Dubai brand has grown over the years. Pitching a business in this part of the world, 10 years ago was a very different job than pitching it today. Today, everybody has seen what Dubai delivered. Everybody has come to the UAE and has visited either Abu Dhabi or Dubai, and has been out by the tolerance that we see here, the open-mindedness, the security, the opportunities. These are all successes that international investors cannot ignore. And so I'm seeing more and more appetite for this part of the world. Yes, it still has its challenges. Yes, there are still risks, but it's doing everything it needs to do in order to become a market where investors want to have an allocation, where they definitely want to be spending some time, because that matters, right? I mean, if you don't want to go to a place, you're not going to invest there, because at some point, if you're going to put a big portion of your capital to a certain region, you're gonna have to visit this region once in a while. And so if you don't like visiting the region, then you're not gonna allocate the capital. And Dubai does that really well, right? Hosting its guests. And during the pandemic, yes, it's being criticized for keeping its borders open, its hotel opens, but it's done that in a very calculated way, and it's enabled Dubai to build a certain brand equity that life goes on here, and it's been pretty amazing. And we as Dubai residents have been very fortunate to live in a city that has enabled us, allowed us to go to the beach with the right measures in place. Yes. I believe the country will continue to do what it needs to do, and the latest signs that we've seen are all confirmation of that belief.
Amazing. Well, thank you for that. And it's amazing sort of speech and your testimony, what you've done can back it up individually and as property finder. The belief in what's happening here and what can be replicated in the region. So, Michael, thank you so much for your time this morning. We'll obviously continue to follow Property Finder's journey, and stay safe, and catch up again soon.
Thank you very much, Richard, and thank you to all your viewers and likers and people who share your great news. It's always amazing to see good news on Dubai. As you can see, I'm very passionate myself about the city and the country. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
The show was powered by Zbooni. Once again, a big thank you to Zbooni, who helped us bring this episode to you for free. Thank you to the show producer, Yana Kalashnikova, and editor, Alibaba. Check out our other shows on Smashy TV and subscribe to Smashy to get more business news. See you next time on Dubai Works.